Hi, welcome to this tutorial video about Microsoft Word. In this video, we'll look at the rudimentary basics of Microsoft Word, and we'll do it by creating a flyer. First, I have to start the program, of course. Now, I have an icon for it down here on my taskbar, but you might not have one there. You might have an icon on your desktop for it, or you might even have to go through your Start button, navigate to the W section in your Start menu, and then find Word on the menu. That's another way you might have to start it. Or you might have to go into here and click on a Word button here. There are a lot of different ways to start the program. I'll do it by clicking this button right now. I'm working in Word 2016. Each different version of Word looks slightly different, but in all of them, when you open the program, you come to a page that's usually split into two sections. The bottom of the sections shows you file names of documents that you've been working on already. The top of the section usually has templates that you could work with. And the template we want is the blank template. We want to start with a new blank document. So I'll click on that one time, and here I am in the Word screen. Now just a quick reminder of what the different parts of the screen are for. At the top we have a title bar, and once I've saved the document and given it a name, that name will appear up here. At the left side of the title bar we have what's called the Quick Access Toolbar, which by default comes with three buttons on it. There's the Save button, there's the Undo button, and there's the Redo button. Of course, there is no undo or redo until you first start working, but they're there waiting for you to get some work done. Below that, we have the ribbon, and the ribbon is this long, wide area here just below the title bar. The ribbon is broken into tabs, and the tabs are broken into groups. The groups have the actual command buttons in them, and they're grouped in commands that go together. Notice that on some of the groups there's a little arrow in the lower right corner, and if you click on that arrow, it will show you the full complement of commands that would go in that group. Sometimes you might come into Word and not be able to find a command button that you think should be there. So if that's the case, look for that little arrow and click on it, because you may more easily find what you're looking for in this dialog box. Right now, I'll close the font dialog box because I didn't really need it. I just wanted to show it to you. Okay, I have a flashing cursor here in my document, and I'm going to go ahead and start typing the text that will be in our flyer. Then after the text is in, and we've talked a little bit about fonts and text and things like that, we'll start adding some cosmetic changes to the document to make it fun to work with. So this is a flyer to invite people to come to an adoption event at an animal shelter. So I'll type come one ... I'll press my enter key, which brings me down to the next line, and I'll type ... come all! Exclamation point for excitement, of course. Then I'll press my enter key again, and I'll type adopt a fawn, a word that I just made up, Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'll press enter again. I'll type kittens and puppies are on their way. Animal adoptions is a new rescue / shelter in town. Come visit, and see our new facility on Airport Road, period. I'll press enter again to bring me down to the next line, and then I'll type the last two lines that will be on this flyer. Call 555 hyphen 5555, or email, and I want to put the email on the next line, so I'll press enter again, adopt me at animaladoptions.org. O-R-G. Okay, so that's all the text that's going to be in this flyer. Obviously, it doesn't look much like a flyer right now because it's small and it doesn't take up much room, and it certainly is not eye-catching, but it's enough to get us started. So the first thing I'll do is I'll save what I've done so far. I could just click the Save button here on the Quick Access toolbar, or I could click the File tab on the ribbon and go to Save or Save As. No matter what I do of those three choices, the result will bring me to a Save As window. And I'm going to browse to decide where I want to put this. As you can see, I have a lot of folders on my computer. To keep things simple, I'm just going to tell the computer to put it on the desktop for now. So I'll click on Desktop, and I'll click here to give it a name, and I'll call this Adoptions Flyer. Sorry for my bad typing. I'm not a great typist. Notice, though, that even in this little window like this, I can correct myself before I click the Save button. And it's not a bad idea to check your own typing and spelling before you save things. I'll go ahead and click the Save button now. And look up here on the title bar. Now there's the name of my document. And here is the text for my flyer. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what we see in front of us. First of all, I want you to notice that every time I pressed my Enter key on the keyboard, I created a new paragraph. On the Home tab, in the paragraph group, there's a button called the Show Hide button. And if I click on that, it shows me non-printing keystrokes. Non-printing keystrokes are critical to the development of any document, but they don't take ink when you print. So every place that I press my Enter key is really important, but it doesn't use any ink, so it's called a non-printing keystroke. What I would like you to notice is that there is room after every paragraph. Every time I press my Enter key, I created a little space before the next line. Whereas down here, because I didn't press my Enter key at the end of this line, there's a little less space between these two lines. Line spacing is shown here. Line spacing is the amount of space between lines within a paragraph. Paragraph spacing is the amount of space between paragraphs. So this is always a little bit less. And it's controlled, if you want to change this, with a button up here called the Line and Paragraph Spacing button. I'm not going to go ahead and change anything. I'm okay with what the default setting is, but I just want you to know that you can control this. If you want to make these spaces greater or smaller, you can do that here. And for those of you who are going to eventually be writing research papers, double spacing becomes very important. That's a requirement for research papers. Okay, I'm going to turn off the show hide because it's not an attractive thing to keep going on your document. All right, now let's take a look at font settings. Notice that this document has a default of Georgia. That's actually not standard for Word. I have Georgia set because it's a font that I like. But the basic default font for Word is one called Calibri. See the name right there? That's actually the default font for Word. But I changed it to Georgia because it's a font that I like. If you would like to set a font for all your new documents to be at a specific font, you can click that arrow I was talking about, find the font that you want, and then click Set as Default. And from then on, all your new documents will be in that font that you chose. And that's how I got Georgia to be my default font. A font is the stylistic display of the typeface that is in your document. The font is cosmetic. It's the way a letter looks. And we might change the font for this. First though, let's make all of this bigger. I'm going to make, this is my title here, so let's make it a lot bigger. We want it to sort of fill the screen a lot more. We want the people to feel invited. So here I'm going to change the font size, and I'll come down. Look what happens. I can get a preview of how big things are. And for a flyer, we want it to jump out and really invite people. So I'm going to go to the largest size available on this scale, 72 point, and I'll click on that. And now I've got a font that's really nice and big. But I would like to offset these words. Instead of having them both left justified the way they are on the screen right now, this is fine for that to be left justified, but let's get this one to scooch over to the right. So I will click on this line right here, and up here in the paragraph group on the Home tab of the ribbon, I will go to the alignment buttons. Notice that we are currently set at left alignment. I'm not going to use center alignment yet. I'll use that later on. For this particular line, let's right align it. So that's kind of nice. I like the balance between those two phrases, come one, come all, and they're sort of juxtaposed against each other. Now, I would actually like everything else here to be center aligned, not just one or two lines. I think all of it should be centered because flyers are kind of like that. So I will use my mouse to highlight all of this. Then I'll go back up to that paragraph group on the Home tab of the ribbon. And again, with these alignment buttons, I'm going to choose the center alignment button this time. And that center aligns the rest of the text. This does also need to be bigger. But what I would like to do before I make that bigger is I would like to set the view of my document so that I can see one full page at a time. And that way I can see how much room I've got on the page for what I'm doing here. In order to do that, I'll take my mouse and I will click the View tab on the ribbon. And right underneath my mouse, here's the command right here. I'll tell the computer that I'd like to see one page, one full page of my document. So I'll click on that. Makes everything a little bit smaller, but the advantage here is that I can now see the full page, and I'll be able to determine if I'm going too big or too small with my font, etc. All right, I'll go back to the Home tab. I have all my text selected, and let's make it bigger. I will do it this time a little more carefully. I'm using the Grow Font or Increase Font Size button, and I'm just clicking it carefully as I go to see how things fill out on the page. This is looking pretty good. It's much more legible. If I put this up on a store window, or if I put it on a telephone pole, if I posted this somewhere in public, this would be readable. Especially our title is nice and readable. Okay, so I'm going to click my Save button before I do anything else because I don't want to lose the work that I've done so far. Notice this time when I click Save, it feels like nothing happened. But because I already have a name for my document and I've already decided where it should be saved, the computer doesn't need to prompt me for anything. At this point, it just resaves to the exact same name and location that I already determined. So let's put a picture in here. In order to do that, I'm going to need to create some space. Or I could put a picture down here towards the bottom, but I think it might be fun to put it sort of in the center. So I'm going to click after the term Adopt-a-thon, and I'm going to create a new blank line by pressing my Enter key one time. And when I do that, I've created actually a new blank paragraph in my flyer. I have a flashing cursor there, and that's the first thing you have to do when you want to insert an object into a document, is you have to get your cursor to where you want the object to appear or to be deposited, to be inserted. And as you might guess, in order to insert a picture, I have to go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. I'll click on that. And then right here, there's a button for inserting pictures. I'll click on that. I have a choice to get a picture that maybe I already have on my computer, or I can get a picture that's online. Let's do the online option. I'll click on that. And when you go with that option, Microsoft Word offers you the search tool called Bing, which is a Microsoft search tool. Doesn't offer you Google, doesn't offer you any other search tools that you might use. It wants you to use their search tool, but that's okay because it works. So I'll click in here where it says search Bing. I'll click there one time and let's type puppies. I want to see pictures of puppies. And I can either click this search tool right here or I can press the enter key on my keyboard. I wait for a second and here, oh my goodness, they're pretty cute. Here are pictures of puppies that we can choose from. And they're quite adorable, aren't they? It'd be nice if we had puppies and kittens together. But just a picture of a puppy will be sufficient. Oh, these are cute pictures. Okay, let's go back up. Let's use this one. Pretty adorable. I'll click on it one time. I could have double clicked it. If I double clicked it, that would have issued the command right then. But what I did here was I clicked it one time, and now I have an insert option here, which I will click on. And I'll wait for a second, and there's the picture inserted into my document in the location where my cursor was flashing. That's successful. But notice, my gosh, that now my flyer is 2 pages. And you don't want that. A flyer should be one piece of paper. So we need to change this because it's just too big. The picture's too big. So what we'll do is we will resize it. Notice before I do anything that the picture is the selected object on my screen. And I know that for a couple of reasons. One is that I can see handles on it. You see these little circles here? Those are called resizing handles, and we're going to use them in just a second. Those resizing handles are a visual indicator to me that this object is currently selected. And notice that while it's selected, I got some new tabs up here on my ribbon. And these are specific tabs for working with this kind of an object. So whenever you have an object in a document, you will often get new tabs on your ribbon. And it's not a bad idea to check those out and see what you could do with them. Right now, all I want to do is make this picture smaller because I want to be able to get all of this flyer onto a single page. So I will point at a corner handle, and it could be any of the 4 corners, and I will drag up and sort of towards the center. There we go. Still too big though. There we go. Now I've got everything on one page. I could, while I have this picture selected, make a whole lot of stylistic and cosmetic changes to it. I don't want to spend too much time. Actually, I'm only going to show you one thing. I'll show you, we could put a border on this picture, and that would be in the Picture Tools Format tab. Here there are picture styles and borders that we can choose from. If I move my mouse this way, notice that I can look at different border styles. I can tilt it, that's kind of fun. I can make a circle out of it. That's really cute, but it takes up too much room. Defeats the purpose of what we just did. I think I'll go with this one. It's a nice, soft, gives a little rounded edge to things, so I'll click on that. Okay. So far, we're doing well. We're doing a good job here. I think I would like to emphasize certain things in this document, and I might do it by changing the font. So maybe I'll come in here and I will highlight this text, and I'll come over here to where my font is controlled. I'll click the down arrow to see the different choices that I've got. And notice that I can just move down this list. And as I move down the list, I get a preview in my document of what the different fonts might look like. That's kind of a fun font, the Algerian one. There are a lot of fonts here. Look at this. See, I can scroll down and look at different fonts. So I'm not going to take a lot. I'm going to go with that Algerian font. Now already I'm still having trouble here. Do you see the fact that I'm still now being pushed onto 2 pages of this document? I think one thing I'll do is I'll reduce the line spacing on my title. It doesn't need to be as extreme as it is. So I'll highlight those two titles. I'll come up here. This is the button I was talking about before, line and paragraph spacing. I'll click on this button and I'll say remove the spacing after paragraphs. And notice that it's a very subtle change, but it brought back my text at the bottom, and that's a good thing. I think that all of this text could get a little bit smaller, though. I don't need it to be quite so big. So I'll highlight that. I'll come over here. I've currently got it set at 26 point, and maybe I'll take that to 18 point. That will give me a chance to make this a bit bigger. Whoops, it doesn't need to be that big, does it? But that's good. And maybe I'll change that font too. And I'll go to something like Cooper Black. That's a nice, bold, stand out and grab you font. And maybe we'll put some color on that. Here I have a font color button. And when I click on that, I get a whole palette of colors. Red really stands out. That jumps right off the screen, doesn't it? So I'll put red on that. And maybe here, I'll put a color on here too. I'll click here to get my palette. And maybe I'll make that blue. There we go. That's nice. I'll also make this bold. Better still. We're doing a good job here. Now, one thing that can happen sometimes, and it didn't actually happen here, is that you can get what's called a hyperlink when you type an email address. And that didn't actually occur here. But when it does happen, you can right-click on the email address, and there would be an option saying remove hyperlink. Because this isn't linked, it's not an issue, but it's something to look out for. All right, I think I'm actually want to bold everything because we want this to be an attention grabber. That's good. Airport Road, though, should maybe not be broken up. So we'll get Airport Road like that. And also, I would like to correct my misspelling here. Did you see that I misspelled down here? And I'm going to fix that by clicking in there and typing the I, and then use my arrow key to move over so I can delete that I. And now I have a correctly spelled flyer. I've got some nice fonts, attention grabbing up here. I have important fonts down here that are giving information for everybody to know. I might put a little color on here too, just to make it more fun. Maybe I'll make that blue also. And then it might be nice to just put a border around this entire page. So let me show you how to do that. We'll go to the Design tab on the ribbon, and over to the far right, the very last button on the ribbon now is called Page Borders. I'll click on that button, and there are a lot of choices here, and I'm not going to go through them all. This is a place where you could play to your heart's content, but I will tell the computer that I would like to have a border that goes around the whole page, and I'll tell it, at the moment I'm not going to change the color or the width, but they have what are called art borders, which are fun. I'll click this down arrow and notice all the different kinds of borders I can pick from. This is really a fun thing to look through. You could spend a lot of time looking through this. I'm going to keep it rather simple and just go with some stars. I can change the size. Notice it shows you over here on the right what that would look like. And I can change the point size of the stars. I can make them bigger if I want to. I can change the color. Oh, no, I can't. The stars have a default color. There are some things where you can change the color and other times you can't. We'll go ahead and just use this. So I'll click OK. And now, doesn't that look nice? That gives a nice offset feeling to my flyer. I'd say that we're in good shape here. I'll click my Save button. If I was going to print this, I would go to the File tab on the ribbon. I would come down here to the Print command, and I would see what's called a print preview. A print preview allows you to see what your document will look like before you actually spend any paper printing it. There are a lot of options over here that have to do with whatever printers are hooked up to your computer, how many copies you want, etc., etc. But this shows me that I actually have a pretty nice flyer now that I would feel good about putting up for the public to see. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video, and when you're done watching it, you'll have an assignment to go with it. If you've got questions, be sure to let me know.